They're interested in white picket fence, even if that's a brownstone or a nice little Cape Cod somewhere with accessible play yards or playgrounds nearby. They want to have good housing values. That's often correlated with school systems, and that means high test scores. And if they're elementary school kids, they want those schools next to them, or once they're in middle school and high school, they can bus their kids to those magnet schools someplace else. This has been New York's success, actually. They want walkable cities with parks and playgrounds. And even suburbs aren't so great about this. I live in a suburb where you can't, take a stroller to the mall because there's no sidewalks. So that's not such a great thing. They want safe, low-crime areas. But the key thing is they want other families with kids. In fact, there's sort of a life cycle issue that families will find a neighborhood. They'll look for neighborhoods with other kids on the street. One of the problems with my street is that they have a bunch of kids on that street. And if they can't find them, they're going to move to the brand new developments where all those young families are living. Tensions. Okay, housing values depend on these test scores, so class exclusivity is a desirable thing for the middle class. I met a small D, not big D, sorry, small, a different talk last Wednesday. Lots of small D Democratic-controlled schools. Parents want to be involved. They are really engaged in parent-teacher relationships. They want to be involved in extracurricular activities. The middle class is really involved with their kids. They're going to be really involved in the schools. They are not going to go for any of this autocratic mechanism, the school administration, especially from the top down. That's one reason charter schools are attractive to them, because they can feel they can be more involved. But the charter schools can really balkanize a neighborhood and balkanize a district across the board, as each little school takes control of its resources in competition with others. Again, the idea of established neighborhoods is important to them. This is where you can find other kids. A lot of you probably gone through this yourselves. Other problems is families extend themselves, overextend themselves, buying into good districts, whether they can afford it or not. If they're going to commit to the city, they often commit to the city because land might be cheap, housing might be cheap, but they're going to pay extra in order to get their kids into private schools if that's what it takes. And the other key thing about all this exclusivity is that we now know that the schools are as racially segregated as they were in the 60s. Gary Orfield, who worked at first at Harvard, now at UCLA. The Civil Rights Project is really a key cutting-edge place to look at that particular problem. The Michigan school funding structure is really important to think about because we actually have one of the more progressive mechanisms. For thinking through, my time thanks, for more equity with the inner city schools getting a little bigger chunk of that formula, which I think had been pretty successful until the tax structure decided it was going to become archaic and obsolete. Since manufacturing, can't tax manufacturing anymore because there is less manufacturing now. So I think the funding structure for school districts is an important piece that we've got to keep track of for the state, for the cities, especially Detroit. The solution is to create family enclaves in the city. There was a really great question that came up from, I think, the balcony, the first panel that said, we can create these sort of housing developments where we actually have single-headed households where they can share amenities. It's a Scandinavian model. It's been in urban planning textbooks for 60 years. We actually have American feminist planners who've talked about this too. The cooperative housing movement has incorporated this even as multi-generational housing. There are some great models. For example, in Oregon, they've got some great models where people can share playground space, they can share kitchens, they can have their own kitchens because they want to do something joint. That's, I think, a really useful thing. This kind of idea of family enclaves can work in the most dense places. The Chelsea neighborhood in southern Manhattan was a working class neighborhood. I had a pal who grew up there. But now it's sort of a yuppie place where people with families have found each other. They're buying houses because through word of mouth they've created this real estate phenomenon there, but they also control the local public schools there. And so you create this enclave even in a new sort of real estate market. And then magnet schools. Again, arts, sciences, baccalaureate programs, etc. The creative class, I probably won't talk so much about this because I think Clare, you're going to talk about this too. Obviously, we know all about that here in Detroit. There's lots of good groups talking about that here in Detroit, including, but we can incorporate things like transportation systems have to talk about too, like the minibus or jitney systems for places like Detroit. Childless households. Also, recreate the urban village in a multi-generational and multi-class. We can create mostly middle-class housing, keeping some low-cost housing subsidized for them. This problem of life cycle with other kids around is an important piece, but you got to build trust through community associations and local to control that social capital piece that Avis school knew about during lunch. So I'd let you cover that. And for middle-class enclaves for African Americans and immigrants. The black middle class has always thought of community as an important asset and resource. And Karen Lacey at that other school down the road at University of Michigan has written about black middle class enclaves at AmericaJR at Northwestern in Chicago that has written extensively about the black middle class. Detroit has an extensive black middle class. I know that there's been concerns about losing the Detroit's black middle class, but both the professional and the entrepreneurial pieces of that are important. Arab Americans and Hispanics have contributed to this, so we need to think about strengthening those. The key piece is creating urban villages with community pride, community control. This is going to be too slow, I'm not going to try to speed up. Home ownership is important, but not necessary. We can actually do this through renting, as long as we have community development organizations and parent-teacher organizations. Mayoral control is an important piece that's worked in Chicago, New York does it too. I don't think that's actually as necessary, but we need to have family input into local schools, especially at the elementary level. Multi-generational housing, multi-class housing is the key. Again, organized through community associations, ward-based government. This is in part the key to Pittsburgh's transformation. Nobody talks about it, but when they moved to neighborhood-based district elections, that really created a sense of neighborhood protection in the city of Pittsburgh. And does it mean more gated communities and privatopias? Maybe. And the sort of new urbanism piece, that can be a part of that. But we haven't had to do that necessarily in Boston, Chicago, because what they just really be able to create a there in their neighborhoods. If we get better community organizing, we can save the city. And I think that Avis would agree with me on that. There are other resources, so if you want that PowerPoint, I can share it. All right, let's see if we can transfer this.
All right, thank you. Our wrap-up speaker for the panel is Clare Ramsey, who's the managing editor of Model D, and I'm guessing that many of you are product ready.
I'm not an academic, I'm a journalist, so I'm very honored to be sitting next to Lou and Louise, and I hope everyone goes home today with visions of Louise and Glazer's maps in their heads, because they really are remarkable. They tell a story that, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So, why this issue is so important to me is because basically I don't want to be an airport grandparent. I really think that we all in Metro Detroit and Southeast Michigan need to think about where we want to be. Probably some people here are grandparents, some students here maybe one day will want to have kids. I recommend it. And I really don't want to be someone who has to tell, watch my kids leave because they feel like they can't do what they want to do here. So really that's, there's economic reasons for all this. There's also a very personal reason we should all think about, is that we want our kids to be able to be where we are. So I'm the editor of Model D. It's an independent online magazine. We've been online for 5 years now, and our focus is the city of Detroit. The company that produces and publishes Model D is called Issue Media Group, and we also have publications in 13 other markets around the country. We're in Tampa, Baltimore, Toronto, Grand Rapids. We also have Metro Mode, which is a new economy magazine that covers Southeast Michigan.